All right. Hello and welcome back to that WNBA podcast. I'm your host, Jan From, and I'd like to welcome you back to the podcast where, as you know, we dive deep into the world of the WNBA. We look at celebrating these incredible athletes, these thrilling games, incredible stories. And whether you're a long-time fan or you're new to the sport, hopefully I've got you covered with all the latest news from around the league. So, get ready to be inspired, get ready to be informed and entertained, and let's tip off the podcast. So, beginning with today's big news. So, I've talked about it last week's show that, obviously it's a new year, it's a new look. We're back again for 2025. There's a few things that got in the way at the end of last year, but we're back. We're better than ever. We've got new sound. Hopefully it's coming good through on your end. We've got better quality camera. So we're all set. We're ready to go. And with that comes something that I've been working on. Still a little in the works. Still working on the kind of the Twitter page and how it's all going to look. But that WNBA podcast is now going to be part of my new network, which is going to be called the Female Sports Podcast Network. And with that in mind, as I've said in the past, I love talking about all sports and all female sports in general. And therefore, I really wanted to expand and kind of talk about more than just the WNBA. I want to cover all sorts of sports. And I kind of couldn't find a way to do that all in one podcast. It's a little difficult. I found kind of, that was going to clash. It might not connect with everybody. So what I'm going to do is have an overarching network, the same as other people do, and kind of talk about other sports underneath that umbrella. So there'll be more podcasts during the week. They will all fall under the Female Sports Podcast Network. They're all going to be titled the same way as that WNBA podcast, but it will be, for example, that AFLW podcast or, whatever you're kind of looking for. So whether that's, that WSL podcast when we're talking about soccer, whatever it might be. So there's still some details to go. There's still some things about me setting up these kind of smaller podcasts underneath the one network. I'm all doing it by myself. I'm not making any money as of yet. Of course, I don't have very many viewers. Hopefully those of you that are seeing these are enjoying these podcasts, and hopefully I can keep talking about it. And, it's mainly for my own fun, my own interest at the moment to have somewhere to share my passion for these sports. But I'd love to kind of go out there and talk about more female sports, more leagues, kind of widen that umbrella and see how we go. It's all going to be organized by me. It's not going to be making any money to start with. There aren't going to be any other presenters. Maybe in the future that can be the case if you want to support. Maybe I can start, going onto TikTok and some other platforms, making some short form videos, and maybe we can grow this. A bit like a few other brands and networks out there at the moment, and we'll see where this goes. We'll see where this takes us, and hopefully I can make more podcasts that'll be coming out on different days of the week. I'll work out kind of what set days each podcast is going to fall on. I kind of worked out, as you can see, I'm timely with my release that WNBA podcast comes out on a Wednesday here in Australia. We'll see kind of where the other ones fall. But if anyone out there listening has any suggestions, if there's any sports you want to hear about, whether that's cricket, whether that's soccer, other basketball leagues around the world when it comes to female basketball, whether you want the AFLW, which is something I'm really interested in doing because I have some small connections in that world, and I watch a lot of the AFLW here in Australia, whether it's the Olympics, the Commonwealth Games, whether it's tennis, all these things. If you've got anything that you particularly want to hear about, let me know, and I'll see whether I can make it a reality, and whether I'm passionate enough and whether I have the knowledge to share that with you. So that's the beginning. That's the news I wanted to share just really quickly. That WNBA podcast now falls under the umbrella of the Female Sports Network, which is something, the Female Sports Podcast Network, which is something that I am, trying to arrange and starting kind of to work on. So it will take a little while to get it going, but it's something that I'm working on now. And that's the big news I wanted to share with you. With that being said, with that being done, we can now get into our weekly episode content, which this week is going to be about Unrivalled. And that's going to be the case because there's really not a lot to talk about when it comes to the WNBA at the moment. Obviously, we've still got almost 4 months until the WNBA is back in action. And with that in mind, obviously, there's not a lot of news. Last week, we talked about some free agent stuff. We kind of reflected on the WNBA finals and the draft lottery, things like that. But at the moment, not a lot to really discuss, not a lot to mention. So, like I said, I'm going to be covering whatever else there is kind of in the world of women's basketball, and that includes Unrivalled. Unrivalled, obviously, being a new league, started, to kind of give WNBA players something to do in the off season. A way to make money, which means that they don't need to go overseas. A way to keep their skills, and their basketball honed, and to keep that work going in the off season, and for them not to have to travel to places all around the globe to make ends meet, because obviously not every women's basketball player gets the same sort of brain exposure and money as, let's say, Caitlin Clark does at the moment. And even with her contract or other, let's say max contracts in the WNBA, still often not a lot of players get that, but even the players that do, it's a good wage, but it's not, let's say, the same, of course, as NBA players get paid. So to be able to support their families and to do all those things, in the past, players have had to go to Turkey, to Russia, here to Australia, which, to be honest, I'd love to see some of those WNBA players coming to Australia and playing. That would be fantastic for us. But it's kind of taken that away, and obviously there's a long layoff. So it's an opportunity for them to keep playing with the best talent in the world, for them to make more money maybe than they even are making in the WNBA at the moment, and for them not to have to go overseas. Obviously, the big player that didn't join the Unrivalled League in its first inaugural season is Caitlin Clark, because she came from such a huge, load from the college seasons straight into the WNBA. She's done a lot of basketball. She's been scrutinized a lot around the world. She's had so much attention that she just wanted some time off, from what I understand. So obviously she's been doing work with the Indiana Fever, still working out. That's obviously given, but she opted not to join Unrivalled or play basketball overseas anywhere, which I don't think that's really ever going to be on Caitlin Clark's agenda, because of her high profile and because of the attention she has in the United States. But she just wanted a bit of a holiday. So you've seen her around at different basketball games. You've seen her at the Chiefs game in the NFL in the playoffs, all sorts of things. And, also supporting her partner who plays college ball, if I'm not mistaken. And, just kind of enjoying some time off and that off season. But with that in mind, there's still a lot of incredible talent in the Unrivalled League. So I thought we'd discuss kind of what's been happening there, what the games are like, what the league is about, maybe what the viewership is doing, how it's being received, and some other things of that nature. So with that in mind, I wanted to have a look and just kind of run you through Unrivalled, how it works, and also maybe let's have a look at their website. So I can't show you the website directly. I don't have the compatibility here. And look, I think it'll slow the podcast and this internet that I have down way too much regardless. And look, I think it just wouldn't quite look right. So what we're going to do is, keeping in mind that I'm going to be looking at a little bit of the Unrivalled website here, which has got a quite nice look about it. It's very user friendly. It's not like, let's say, the NBA website, especially here in Australia. The user friendliness of that site is not what I expect from a league of that standard. But essentially, Unrivalled was built in collaboration with some of women's basketball's biggest stars. So mainly what people would know would be that Brianna Stewart was kind of the beginning of this league. They got a big sponsorship deal, I think with TNT to broadcast the rights, as well as True TV. I think you can stream it on Max as well. And yeah, this year is the launch year. So it's the inaugural season. It's made up of 6 clubs. So you've got the Laces, the Lunar Owls, the Mist, the Phantom, BC, Rose Basketball Club, and Vinyl Basketball Club. And there's a total of 36 players. So each club, it's a 3-on-3 league. Okay, so each club essentially has 3 starters. Okay, and then you have, of course, bench players as well. You can't just play with 3 starters the whole game. But let's have a look through the players. So a lot of these ladies you would recognize. They are stars of the WNBA, starting with Stewie, of course, and all of these are with nicknames. So I'm going to read them out with the nicknames because that's part of the kind of the appeal. I don't know if you've heard about the Big 3 League, things like that. It's very similar. So it's a little more fun in terms of the branding. We've got nicknames here for all the players. The basketball clubs and the uniforms are cool. They had their whole launch. It's really interesting, and it should be really entertaining, but we'll go into that later on and see how it's kind of, how it's taken hold of the kind of general public and how it's been received a little bit later. So we've got Stewie, Queen Fee. We've got the Point God. We've got Arike, the Gold Mamba. We've got Reen. We've got Car. We've got Jackie, 305 Barbie, which some of you may know as Angel Reese. We've got Eureka. We've got McBuckets, Marina, the Unicorn, which we talked about last week, in Satu Savali, which we talked about her sadly leaving the Dallas Wings on all accounts. We've got Alicia, Cloud, Skylar, Rakia, Dijonne, Sloot, Slim, Shakira. We've got Tip, BG, Azura, Williams. We've got Money Martin, of course. Aaliyah. We've got Lexi, Aaliyah again. AT, Big Mama, Ray, Jordan, Cam, Lou, and Sabrina. The only one of these that I know is not playing at the moment, as far as I know, is Cam. And that's, of course, Cameron Brink. She's still recovering from her ACL tear. And she has signed up for a number of seasons, but obviously this season she can't play. You can join their newsletter. There is merch for this league. There's all sorts of stuff. But essentially, the Fisa Collier, Brandon Stewart, developed this league, and it's being played completely in Miami. So all the teams are playing in Miami. Okay, they're all in one place. A little bit when you think back to the NBA bubble during COVID, and the court here is a little compressed as well. So it's a full court, but it's 70 by 50 feet. It's a little compressed, and it's also, like I said, a chance for these players to make some real money. So the league has set a record with the highest average salaries in women's sports history. And all of the 36 initial players have received equity ownership. So they all own a part of the league. So that's hopefully going to do them, well in the future when they're no longer playing, whatever the case may be, that they're still going to be making money because they've started something that hopefully will push women's basketball into the future and really kind of be the first step and really, making women's basketball take off even more than is the case already with Caitlin Clark. Like I said, we've talked about the 36 players, and eventually, or essentially, it's going to be 9 weeks of total play, including the playoffs. And it's going to be the 6 teams kind of playing around robin schedules. So the top 4 teams at the end of the regular season will make the playoffs. Okay, the bottom 2 will be eliminated. The games are played in a 1-hour broadcast window. So there's going to be 4 quarters of play with a game clock and a shot clock. And of course, we also have coaches for each of these teams. I'm not going to go through all of that. I think that's a bit too much detail that a lot of you probably won't remember. And it's going to feature a 1 versus 1 single elimination tournament played in February to determine the best 1v1 player in the world. So that's also really exciting. It's something that I think people have been wanting to do. Have wanted the NBA to do for a long time in the All-Star tournament, to kind of give that a bit of a new spice and refreshment, and to see who really is the best one-on-one player in the world, whether it's someone with handles like Kyrie, whether it's a taller, it's a bigger player. We always had those discussions about Jordan, LeBron, whether, things like that could happen, or Kobe and LeBron, who the better one-on-one player would be, things like that. So that's what the WNBA players are doing here, essentially, in the Unrivalled League. It's going to be really interesting. I love the idea. And what I also love is that, unlike the NBA players, these ladies aren't scared to maybe lose in that one-on-one tournament, right? They're going to suit up. They're not worrying about their legacy. They're not worrying about what the repercussions to their brand might be if they lose a 1v1 game. Like, it's all in good fun. See who really the best one-on-one player is, who's got the biggest bag. And I think that's going to be really kind of exciting. And look, Unrivaled has a number of partners too. So I think they've, signed contracts with Sprite and Body Armor. And it's really, I think it's really exciting. And I haven't looked at ticket prices. You can obviously go watch. You can pay for tickets and go watch these games live, which is really exciting if you're in Miami. Like I said, you can buy merch. You can watch it on Max, things like that. But that is one of the kind of things we're going to talk about in a little while. Is I haven't really seen a lot of coverage here in Australia, for example. I haven't really found a good way to watch it. I also haven't seen a good, amount of exposure on social media. I've seen bits and pieces of the kind of event they had at the beginning to showcase all the players and the clubs. I've seen bits and pieces from the league, but I haven't seen a lot of highlights, things like that. But we'll go into that shortly. So far, we haven't had a lot of games yet. So essentially, the season started on Jan 17th. So only maybe 5 days ago or so by the time we're watching this. The Lunar Owls beat the Mist in the first game, 84-80. And all these games have been fairly close. So like the Vinyl beat Rose by 6. The Lunar Owls beat Rose by 9. And then there was a couple of blowouts where a team won by about 40 points, and another one here by about, how many is that? 15 points. Another one here by 20. So a couple of blowouts, also a few close games, with 6 games happening so far altogether. So each team's played 2 games so far, essentially. The Laces are on top. They've got 2 wins out of 2. The Lunar Owls have got 2 wins. And Vinyl have got 2 wins. And then the Mist, the Phantom, and Rose all have no wins and 2 losses. So far, it's a big gap between the top 3 and the bottom 3. But it's still a season, and that's obviously going to change. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Going from there, I guess let's talk about, I would say, the elephant in the room, and that's about how this league has been perceived so far. I think it would be a lot of fun I haven't watched a full game because, like I said, it's kind of hard to find over here in Australia a way to watch it without paying multiple different streaming services, more than I already do. So if we have a look at kind of the TV views, TNT kind of released their first set of numbers from the Unrivalled first set of games, and they did try and spin the numbers to look like they're, strong as such, and they are decent, but I guess the big elephant in the room is that without Caitlin Clark, there is no large audience. And that's something that people have been saying for a long time, is that the WNBA has been watched so much because of the presence of Caitlin Clark, and players and other people have pushed back saying it's more than just Caitlin, it's about the product, etc., etc. And while I believe that to be true, while I love the WNBA, while I love watching the WNBA, Caitlin Clark is the reason so many more people are joining in. And to me, that's just a fact, okay? But the debut games averaged around 312 viewers across TNT and True TV. And essentially what TNT said was that these were the most watched WBB games on TNT sport platforms ever. It's a women's basketball viewership record for Sports on Max, and 31 million views of Unrivaled content across the Bleacher Report platforms have been viewed. So that makes it seem strong, but I don't think that TNT executives would be all too happy about those numbers. On a Friday night, some articles have kind of said that it's not the greatest television viewing time slot. I don't know why that is. I'm not in America, but over here in Australia, for example, when we have our AFL football season, Friday night is really the best time slot to watch sport in. I mean, people are coming back from work. It's a weekend. If you're playing weekend games for sports like football or Australian football, whatever it might be, longer format sports games, they're usually weekend games, right? So I'm not sure why Friday night's not a great time to view it in the States. In Australia here, it would be prime time. Everyone's coming home from work. People that are going to be able to go to the game after work on a Friday night, people that come home to watch, they come home, sit down, have a couple of beers, they might have friends around, they're watching the football. So I don't know why that's the case, but, in the WNBA with Caitlin Clark, they had an average of 400,000 views a game, and they drew millions of viewers for the championship series, even though Caitlin got eliminated in the first round. But Unrivaled hasn't come close to that 400,000 view mark on its opening night. Is probably not the best, for TNT per se. And especially since Angel Reese, which people say is the second, most popular player in women's basketball at the moment, is participating in that second game on a Friday night because she plays for Rose Basketball. Yeah, it's not the best look. We'll see how it keeps going from here. I expect it'll pick up a bit, but I think the advertising needs to be stronger. I think there needs to be more content on social media that's easily accessible. And I don't know that just having it on TNT was the best way to go, or on Max, because it's a little hard to watch around the world. I'm not sure why maybe they haven't come to a deal to be able to watch it through the WNBA app. I know the WNBA, I watched WNBA League Pass, for example, and I know that maybe that causes some problem with the licensing rights and whatnot, but I'm not sure why you couldn't say, hey, we'll have it featured on the WNBA app because it is the off season. There's not much happening for a few months. Why can't we have it front and center here? And you can have a button here to go view it through TNT, or if you subscribe to WNBA League Pass for this amount, you can watch these games for free through the WNBA app. I'm not a businessman, but to me that would make a little sense. You may be reducing the amount of money you're going to get from those people that view the sport that way, but you're going to get a larger audience. So, look, in 2023, the WNBA averaged a similar amount of these views per game that the Unrivalled lead is doing now. So maybe it is really just because of the lack of Caitlin Clark, and people can discuss that, and that could be a probable cause. But I think, even though some people are making it out to be a little bit of a disaster maybe for TNT, I don't think it's maybe what they were hoping. I'm hoping it grows. I think with Caitlin it would be much higher. But I also don't think it's a disaster by any means. I mean, if the WNBA averaged 300,000 in 2023, a year before Caitlin got there, I don't think Unrivaled having around that mark or a little bit more than that for its first couple of opening games is a disaster by any stretch of the imagination. So, yeah, look, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, Caitlin might join the league next season since she's had a full off season and hasn't been as busy. But we'll see what happens there and hope for the best. But that's kind of a little overview of Unrivaled, what's kind of been happening again. There haven't been that many games yet, and nothing else has really happened in the WNBA, of course, in the off season over the last week or so. So I'll try to keep reporting on the WNBA throughout the off season, as I said, for the next few months. Whenever anything happens, or we can just discuss generally, I'll just talk to the camera and talk about whatever kind of pops into my mind in the area of women's basketball. But as I said previously as well, this is now part of the Female Sports Podcast Network, and I will aim to get other podcasts out about other sports and other types of content when it comes to female sports and the like. So all those podcasts will be titled, for example, that AFLW podcast, or that cricket podcast, or that WSL podcast, whatever it might be. But they will all fall under the network. The network will have its own Twitter account. It will have all the kind of underreaching podcast names displayed. That WNBA podcast will still have its own account, but it will be linked underneath that Female Sports Podcast Network. And the same will happen with a YouTube channel. So as we have now, this YouTube channel will stay, as well as the Spotify account, but we will don't know what happened there, guys, but we will also create separate, let's say, accounts that will have underreaching podcasts on there, and then those podcasts will just take place in with their own titles under that overreaching network name. So that's kind of the idea. I'll leave it here. Sorry for that little cutout at the end. But as always, thank you very much. Like, subscribe, comment on the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, etc. Leave a review. Comment, get involved. Let's build a community. Let's talk. I love talking sports. And as always, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you on next week's podcast. Bye.